Hello and welcome! This is one of a series of basic videos made at the University of Alaska Fairbanks designed to help students use Microsoft Excel. This video instructs students on how to make a quality scatterplot. Often, the Microsoft presets make a graph that is unprofessional and hard to read. This video will show you how to adjust the plot's parameters to make it publication quality. Here I have some data taken in the lab. I would like to visualize it with a graph. Note that I have labeled my columns with both a title and units. We start by highlighting the data. To make a graph, we go to the Insert tab. Here, I see that we have a number of charts to choose from. Today, we are going to make a scatter plot. Click on the Scatter button. Now, we see that there are 5 different types of scatter plots to choose from. We're going to pick this first option because it does not have any lines. We can always change our mind later and add the lines in. Here is the scatter plot that Microsoft generates. We can start by deleting a few unnecessary items. Because we only have one data set, we don't need a legend. To delete the legend, just click on it and hit backspace on your keyboard. Second, we don't need a title. Usually, in scientific publications, you put a figure caption below the plot. To delete this title, we click on it and hit backspace on our keyboard. Third, we can delete these gray lines. They don't really aid with the plot and they're kind of distracting. Click on the gray line and hit backspace on your keyboard. Next, let's adjust our scale. We can see that Microsoft leaves a bit of white space here at the end and at the beginning. If we look at our data, we see the X values go from 260 nanometers to 270.5. Let's adjust our scale to match that. Click on the X-axis. Here under Axis Options, we can adjust the minimum value. We click on the Fixed button and change that to 260. Then we click on the Maximum button. Again, we say Fixed, and we want this to be 270.5. Now say Close. Now we see that our data spans all the way from the beginning of the x-axis to the end. This looks much better because we don't have any unnecessary white space. Now let's address the y-axis. If we look at the y-axis, we can see that the scale is already quite good. Our data spans from the bottom of the y-axis all the way to the top. However, we might like to add some minor tick marks to better visualize the data. To do this, double-click on the y-axis. Here, under Axis Options, we're going to change the tick mark. We have our major tick mark. Let's change that to pointing inside. And we have a minor tick mark. Currently, it's set to none. Let's also change that to inside. Now click Close. Now we see that we have both a minor and a major tick mark on the y-axis that point inward. I like the look of the tick marks on the inside, so let's change that with the x-axis too. To do that, double-click on the axis. Again, under Axis Options, go down, under Major Tick Mark, change it to inside. Now say Close. One thing you may have noticed is that Microsoft presets the axes to be dark gray. This will look bad in your lab report because all of your other text will be black. Let's change the color. To do so, you double-click on the axis. We go down on this side panel and we hit Line Color. We want to select Solid Line. We want to make sure that that's black. Now say Close. Now we see that the y-axis is black. Let's do it for the x-axis. Again, go down to Line Color, say Solid Line, and make sure that it's black. Now click Close. Both axes are now black. I think it looks nice if you have a border around the entire graph. If you look at some scientific publications, you'll see that this is common. To add a border to the top and the right side of your plot, simply click on the outside. You'll see that this edge appears. Double-click on that edge. A window appears. Under border color, we want to call it a solid line. Again, make sure this solid line is black. Now we see that we have a border on all four sides of our plot. Next, we are ready to add labels to the X and Y axis. Under Chart Tools, click the Layout tab. Under Labels, click Axis Titles. For the primary horizontal axis title, we want the title below the axis. We can see it appears here below the x-axis. Click on the words with your mouse and adjust the title to your liking. In this case, we're going to have wavelength with units of nanometers. It is always pertinent to include your units. Next, we will add a y-axis title. Again, under Labels, click the Axis Title button. This time, we're using the vertical axis. We want to have a rotated title. Click on the title and adjust to your liking. In this case, our title is Intensity, which does not have units. Next, let's adjust the fonts. We see that the X and Y axis have rather small numbers, and the font itself is different than the axis titles. To adjust the font, click on the item you wish to change. We'll start with the X-axis numbers. Go to the Home tab. First, change the size. I think 14 is a nice size. Second, change your font. I recommend Times New Roman because that is likely what you're writing the rest of your report in. It is important to have continuity of font. Now, let's change the y-axis. Click on the y-axis, change the font size to 14, and change the font itself to Times New Roman. Next, let's change the axes titles. Click on the axis title, change the size to 14, change the font to Times New Roman, and unselect this bold icon. Now, let's change the x-axis. Click on the x-axis title, change the size to 14, change the font to Times New Roman, and deselect this bold icon. Now, all of our fonts are exactly the same size, font, and style. Next, let's change the size, shape, and color of our markers. To do this, double-click on the data. Oops, that was only one data point. Click Close, and make sure that you're getting all of the data. Good. Now, under Marker Options, we can pick the marker type. We want to go to Built-in. Let's change our marker type to a square and increase the size 2 notches. Now, we can change the marker color under the Marker Fill tab. Go to Solid Fill and change the color to something that speaks to you, perhaps red. Now say Close. Now we can see that we have red squares that are slightly larger for our markers. If we look closely, we can see that there's a light blue line around our red squares left over from the blue diamonds. Let's fix that. Double-click on the data. This time, go to Marker Line Color. Let's just say No Line. Now say Close. Voila! The blue line is gone. This graph is nearly perfect, but as I look at it, the minor tick marks on the y-axis are a bit overwhelming. Let's change those so there's fewer of them. To do this, double-click on the y-axis. Under Minor Unit, say Fixed, and let's change it to 0.4. Now say Close. That looks terrible. Let's try something else. Double-click on the y-axis again. Let's try 0.5. That looks much better. We can now congratulate ourselves on a most excellent plot. This plot looks great. You could include it in any lab report and receive full credit. There are a few things that you could still adjust if you wanted. Say you wanted to add a line. You could do that by going to the Insert tab, going over here to Chart Types, clicking on the Scatter button like in the beginning, and this time, instead of picking just a plain scatter, you could pick a scatter with lines. Now we see that a blue line is added. Or perhaps, if you don't have discrete data points like I do, you'd like to have a line graph. Again, you can click on the scatter button and pick this third option, which is just a plain line. The type of chart you create depends on the type of data that you have. If you have data that has individual discrete points, you must use a scatter plot because the data is not continuous. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you found this tutorial helpful. If you have further Excel questions, look for our videos on how to change data from text to columns and how to perform a line ST function.